everyone, and welcome to Fan Sports Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcelio Langella and Mars. For this video, we're going to be doing Class 1B, Class 1C, Class 1D, and the Independent League. So we have a loaded show for everybody tonight on this one, Mars. But another week of football. We're starting to get into some rivalries, but we're actually at the halfway because football got 6 weeks. So this is going beyond the halfway point into week 4, Mars, and we're revving along.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy how time flies by, and this was definitely a turbulent season for sure. Yes. But the fact is, and I say this every beginning we have, just be glad that we're playing the game. I mean, that. Just think of it this way: a few months ago, we didn't even know if we were going to play, and now here we are. And let's just try to enjoy as much as possible. And
the programs have done a really good job of when COVID hits, trying to get new games. Some teams are coming back from COVID pause. So it's going to be interesting this week. And I want to welcome all our fans. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you guys subscribe to the show. Give a thumbs up on the video. And if you're new, follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. We've been covering Section 1 football now. This is our second year, Mark. So it's been good. I do want to say from the get-go, there is some construction going on the premises. So if you do hear some banging, don't be alarmed. Unfortunately, we can't handle all the environmental issues. But let's get right into it, Mars. We'll go over the games. Those that are new, we're going to pick about 6 games to go over. We're going to pick all the games at the end. And let's get to it, right? So the schedule on slate, we got Poughkeepsie at Ramapo for Friday, Crow-and-Harmon at Edgemont on Friday. Peekskill is at Kingston. Originally, they were supposed to play Ossining, which I'm a little disappointed because I was really looking forward to that matchup. But they're traveling to Kingston. Bronxville at Woodlands is on Saturday. Valhalla at Haldane. Rhinebeck at Tuckahoe. Pleasantville at Byram Hills. Putnam Valley at Westlake. Albertus Magnus at Irvington. Hastings at Braiarcliff. Dobbs Ferry at Blindbrook. That's all Saturday. Nanuet at Ardsley Sunday. So a nice big slate, but let's get to it. We're going to go through 6 matchups, pick all the games at the end, Mars, and we're going to start with a C matchup. Bronxville 3-0 at Woodlands, who's 0-2. And, these two teams have split the series since 2004, 4-4 since 2004. But Bronxville won in 2019, 30-8. And this Bronxville team is loaded, Mars. We've seen it now 3 weeks in a row. They are clearly the top of the class at C. They beat Tuckahoe pretty handily. Woodlands lost to Haldane last week. But let's start with Bronxville, right? And, before we get into all this offensive and defensive stats, I know there seems to be this conception, Mars, that you are a Bronxville hater. And, I'll let you get an opportunity. But I'll start off first, Mars. Offensively, they have the number 1 offense in C and the D schools. They average 38 points a game. They're actually number 2, only behind Nourish Shell in Section 1 in points scored a game. The last 2 weeks, they've been performing without their quarterback, O'Neal, who's a talent in his own. But it has to start up front, Mars, offensive line-wise, and I know you're a big component of this. Offensive line is controlling the front in every game. And guys like McCormick, Mays, Curran, they've really done a good job. And obviously, when you talk about their quarterback running back, Donahue, who he's making a strong case, obviously, for MVP of the league this year. He had 6 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. He runs with power and speed. They come out in the gun with double wings. They come out in some spread concepts. But he really has been the engine of this offense. And then you had a guy like Connor Randall, who he brings another dynamic. He's another explosive football player who can really hit the home run for this team. Not just on offense, but in special teams. He had, a couple special teams touchdowns as well. So, they have a lot of guys who can hurt you. And I think they're going to attack Woodlands again with that mix of Donahue running downhill and running outside, and then throwing in those counters with Randall, throwing in those outside runs with Randall, and throwing it to Randall. I think they have a bunch of guys who can hurt you. And, those are just some of the names, but there are other guys who have performed well for this Bronxville offense. And I think throwing is just going to be a supplement to them, just to keep the defense honest, because I think they have an advantage up front, Mars, and I think they're going to use that, and they're going to try to run downhill against this Woodlands team and try to pound them away with their weapons. I think that's what's going to happen offensively. Defensively, they also have the number 1 defense in the C&D schools, only giving up 2.3 points a game. It's actually number 2 in Section 1, tied with Somers. So again, offensively, they've been really good. Defensively, they've been really good. And it's because they have speed at each level. When we talk about defensive line, one of the guys, Raimundo, has been really good at the defensive line spot, but there's been others. McCormick, obviously, you could talk about him too. Linebackers with Donahue and Murray have been really active. They are a force at the linebacker spot. Those two guys leading the way. And even in the secondary, last week against Tuckahoe, I thought Tuckahoe was kind of smart. They knew they had to attack Bronxville in the passing game because up front will be a tough task. But a guy like Chris Kelty, Marsh, he's had 3 INTs the last 2 weeks. He's really been a ball hawk for this team. And another kid, Chris Lockwood, he had an interception last week too. So you're going to see, they have talent at each level. But to me, I think the biggest thing that they could do against Woodlands is prevent the big plays, right? Because Woodlands has speed, and that's where they can really hurt you. If they get an open field, that's where they can hurt you. Prevent Woodlands from getting outside and breaking contain. Force them to run in between the tackles to your strength. And I think that's what Bronxville is going to try to do to Woodlands. Marsh, what are your thoughts on Bronxville, you absolute hater over there?
I mean, the crazy thing is that I actually picked Bronxville, I think, of those 3 games we've seen so far, 2 times I picked them. So if you're really looking at the math here, I was favoring Bronxville 2 out of 3 times. The only time I didn't was against Dobbs Ferry, which was definitely a big win for Bronxville. But if I have to be the symbol of energy that brings to the Bronxville locker room, then it's okay. I don't mind doing that. But when you definitely look at Bronxville, you see a team that it was, and I forgot who they had interviewed. I know Lohad had talked to one of the players, and they mentioned that since there's no state championship this year, they have to try to prove everyone wrong that they deserved to be in that state championship contention. And so far, they've been proving it in spades. And I think that they've been kind of dominating up front. Their offensive line has been moving dudes as easily as possible. The run offense has been really efficient. And as you mentioned, I feel like the pass has just been like a side note. Yeah. I mean, just because they've been so efficient at running the ball so effectively, with a lot of their weapons. I mean, Donahue has been, just dominating in all fronts. But defensively, as you mentioned, they've also been, performing very well. They've proven themselves to be the best team of the class, and in my opinion, so far by far. Yeah. I think there hasn't really been a team that's been matching them in a lot of ways. But as you mentioned, to stop Woodlands, you have to stop them from breaking contain. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Bronxville's speed can match Woodlands pretty well. I just think that if you're trying to scheme against Woodlands, you're going to want to stop contain.
Yes, absolutely. Moving to Woodlands, Marshall, offensively, it's the KJ Leach show. He has been the star of the show for them, an explosive athlete, wants to get into space, can hurt your running, and he's shown the ability, especially last week, he can throw the ball a little bit too. So, again, I think the team struggles with running with power. So the big thing that they can do, it's you're not going to win against Bronxville running it right in between the tackles, right? So you want to try to break contain. You want to try to spread them out. You want to try to get outside of them and use your speed to your advantage. You're going to have to win, not just on outside runs, but you're going to have to make them pay in the pass. I know Tuckahoe tried it, failed. A bunch of teams have tried it and failed against Bronxville. So we're going to see if Woodlands can take advantage of that with their speed. And they're going to have to hit on some big pass plays against his defense because it's hard to get consistent drives against his defense because they have been sound at all 3 levels. So for Woodlands, they got to hit on some big plays. But the big thing to me is turnovers. Right? Teams that have played Bronxville has forced turnovers. Bronxville has scored on turnovers. Like, you cannot turn the ball over. You need to be smart with the ball. You need to win the turnover battle because that's where Bronxville really starts hurting people. They hit some big plays on offense, but when they start turning you over on defense, that's when things get out of hand. And if Woodland wants to stay in this game, they're going to have to prevent that. Defensively, again, to me, you have to try to slow down Donahue. You're not going to stop him. It depends on if O'Neal's going to play because that does change things. But if Donahue's at the quarterback spot, he's shown even the ability to throw because he's a good athlete. But that's what you want him doing, right? You don't want him running downhill because he is a load and he can wear on a defense and he can punish you. So, Woodlands, it's going to be big on these inexperienced linebackers. They're going to have to be very active in this game. And this defensive front going up against a good offensive front, they're going to have their hands full, Woodlands. And they're going to need to really step up at all 3 levels to try to stop this offense. Marsh, what are your thoughts on Woodlands?
I mean, Woodlands' biggest thing when it comes to offense is their speed. And I think that, they've proven that if they can get to the outside, they can make a play, right? And I just think that their goal would be to try to continually try to find ways to get to the outside. You're not going to be able to run to the inside much at all. So I think that you have to try to limit your mistakes, limit the turnovers that you have, and just try to get as much yards as possible, especially trying to break that contain. Defensively, it's really about Donahue. Can you limit Donahue as much as possible and try to get your offense back on the field? The more chances that you get on offense, the more likely you can get some points.
And if they can get Bronxville into long down situations, Woodlands had 3 interceptions last week, right? So their secondary can make plays on the ball. And that's that's I think their best chance. The matchup I'm looking at their quarterback Woodlands KJ Leak versus these Bronxville edge defenders. As you know, he's going to try to get outside of them and make some big plays with his legs. Let's go to another matchup, Mars. Another CD. Well, not another one. This is a CD matchup. Valhalla 2-1 at Haldane, who's 1-2. Mars. Haldane has actually been ahead of this series. They're 4-2 against Valhalla since 2004. They've actually won 3 straight versus Valhalla. And the last time they played them, they won in 2018. But last week, Valhalla beat Dobbs Ferry. Haldane got its first victory against Woodlands. But let's start with Valhalla, Mars. Offensively, I think they're really starting to find their identity. Their quarterback, Joe O'Neill, has done a good job. He's been solid running kind of their Wildcat style and the spread looks. And then when they go under center and run the option and wing concepts, you're really starting to see their freshman running back, Lorenzo Robinson, who had that long touchdown run last week. He has been a stud for them these last couple weeks. Again, a freshman, not a tall guy, but a stocky guy who runs with power and he has solid balance. So he's been a pleasant surprise for Valhalla, and they're going to continue that, especially when they go into under center looks. But I do think even when they go under center, you got to try to get Mahari Davis because he is a game wrecker for Valhalla. You saw that against Dobbs Ferry, where even if he's not winning offensively, getting touches offensively, he can make plays in other facets of the game. But I know that Valhalla wants to get him the ball on the edge, including some quick throws to him. And a guy like Melvin, again, another big body guy. But I did think offensively they did struggle a little bit last week. Again, they scored 3 touchdowns, non-offensive touchdowns, out of their 4 touchdowns, besides a 62-yard run. So, again, for Valhalla, it's not a very explosive offense, but they try to grind you out to try to get these nice long drives and hopefully hit on a couple big plays. They do need to find more consistency offensively than they did last week. So that's something offensively I'm looking at. And I think they're going to try to attack Dobbs Ferry on the outside. I mean, not Dobbs Ferry, Haldane on the outside, because Haldane is a gritty defense, right? And it's not that easy to run in between the tackles on them. So I do think they're going to try to attack them outside. Defensively, to me, it's all about stopping Darren Santos. He has been an absolute force for them. And so the onus is going to be on this defensive line and linebackers. Linebackers like Sullivan, O'Neill, Robinson, Melvin. They need to be very active because he is a bully. You need to gang tackle this guy. And he's shown the ability not just run with power, but he can make some big chunk plays with his speed. So he's been really good for them. You want to try to slow him down and get Haldane into second and third and long, because then, you can let your DBs make plays. I talked about Mahari Davis. He had that pick 6 last week. He's one of the best defensive backs in the class. So that's what you want. You want to try to get him in second, third and long, get these outside linebackers rushing the passer on Haldane, and maybe you can force some turnovers. And I think you'll be in a good situation. Mars, what are your thoughts on Valhalla?
Yeah, when you look at Valhalla, I mean, the biggest thing I kind of notice is, as you mentioned before, they need to they're struggling to find their identity, and I think they need to kind of slow down the pace. I feel like they have to kind of regroup and find what makes them the most efficient. I think that by breaking the edge, breaking contain, kind of grinding out the clock, right? Slowing down the pace to meet their needs, meet what is their strength is what's going to help their offense going forward. I mean, like you mentioned, they scored points, but not necessarily from the offensive way.
One long touchdown.
Yeah, and I think they need to kind of regroup and really, like I said, grind out on offense. Really allow their guys to kind of gain control and momentum. When it comes to defense, I mean, you kind of want, like I said, win the early downs, right? Force Haldane to have to do something that they don't like. Try to toss it up, try to get those third and longs in those scenarios for your defense, and then you can definitely try to get a turnover and get your offense back on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. When I go to Haldane, Mars, offensively, I talked about him against Valhalla's defense. Darren Santos has been tremendous for this team. He has over 100 yards rushing in 3 straight games. This is a guy who's a loaded tackle. He shows really good balance, and that they're gonna, he's gonna carry a heavy workload for them. But I am looking at their quarterback, Daniel Santos, who I also really like, but I'm looking for him to have a bounce-back game, Mars. Last week he had 3 interceptions. If he turns the ball over like that with guys like Mahari Davis and some of these other guys on Valhalla, they're going to lose this game. So I'm expecting a bounce-back game from Daniel Santos to try to be successful running the ball, not just throwing it, but running the ball, because I think Dobbs Ferry had opportunities to hurt Valhalla's defense in play action and quarterback runs. And you saw Dobbs Ferry win on some of those plays. So I'm expecting Haldane, they run completely different schemes. They don't run the option offense. But I do expect them to have similar concepts where have the quarterback try to run the ball outside. Have the quarterback do play action if you can get Darren Santos running the ball. So I do think we're expecting to see a bounce-back game from Daniel Santos, and he's going to have to if they're going to try to win this game. And he's going to have to get the ball out to guys like their wide receiver Irving, Donahue. So those are going to be the guys that are going to have to make plays for them. It's not just going to be the run attack because I'm expecting Valhalla to load the box. Defensively, Mars, again, I think this defense has been really gritty. The last 2 weeks, they've only given up 15 points. Besides that first week where they gave up a lot of points, they really stepped up the last 2 weeks. And it's led by Drew Donahue. This guy he's been their most active defender. I think he's their leading tackler. But he has been really solid for them. But to me, you have to stop the run attack. That's what Valhalla is. Obviously, when they had to change quarterbacks, they became a run-heavy football team. And they're going to show you some of the spread looks, which, again, is going to try to pull you out of those deep boxes. But when they come in with the double wings, you have to load the box, right? And you have to take away these outside runs, these off-tackle runs with Robinson, outside runs with Mahari Davis and the quarterback. So that's going to be big for them. They got to protect the C-gaps. Mars, what are your thoughts on Haldane?
Haldane, like you said, Darren Santos is definitely the show. My biggest thing that I'm looking for this offense is who else is going to step up. That's going to be the big thing. And I feel like Darren Santos is going to come play. It's really going to have to depend on who else is going to help them along this ride. And if no one steps up, then you're really putting too much onus on Darren to kind of really move the offense. And you already know that that Valhalla is really going to key in on Darren. And I really think that if you have another playmaker that steps up, it now opens up the offense to more. And you kind of mentioned the fact that Daniel Santos now needs to have a bounce back game. He is one of those guys that need to perform well in order for this offense to really move effectively down the field. But when you look at the other side of the ball, the defense has been consistently playing well. I know, like you mentioned, the past few weeks they really stepped up. Other than a big loss they had
week
one, but I feel like they kind of reevaluated and kind of bounced back from that really bad loss. But they're definitely going to try to win the early downs and kind of set the pace in their favor and really try to force Valhalla to have to make a big play in order to gain back some of those yards. That'd be the goal, right? And my opinion is that the more chances you give your offense, the more likely you'll gain points. And I really think they're going to try to get off the field as much as humanly possible and allow their offense to kind of try to work.
This matchup I'm looking at, Mars, I'm looking at this Haldane offensive line versus this Valhalla deep front. I think this is going to be the matchup that decides this game, and I think it's going to be big, whoever wins that matchup. Let's go to another game. This time it's the independent league, Mars. Albertus Magnus 2-1 at Irvington, who's 1-1. And Irvington is 3-0 against this matchup since 2004. But I tell you what, Albertus Magnus, they won versus Rhinebeck. It was an impressive victory that they had. Irvington didn't play the last game because of a COVID pause issue. So they're back playing this week. And let's start with Albertus Magnus, Mars. For me, offensively, I think the most impressive football player, and he was a Frank's finest at the linebacker spot, is Cody Johnson. He has been really solid for them, Mars. 160-plus yards the last 2 weeks. He's been really good, and he's going to be the guy who has to carry this load this week. But the offensive line has been improving, and it's not going to be easy against a very tough front and linebacker core in Irvington to run inside. So I'm expecting that it's going to be a grinded-out game with this offensive line and Cody Johnson against this Irvington defense. But I think it'll open things up for their quarterback. Maher has also been impressive these last 2 weeks. He has 5 touchdowns total the last 2 weeks, and he could throw to some of the weapons that Albertus Magnus has developed, and LaRusso out on the edge throwing it to him and running it. Frank Amano, Metcalf. Albertus Magnus has really been improving these last couple weeks, and offensively, you're starting to see some growth from them. And I'm expecting them to try to attack Irvington on the outside with those outside runs to LaRusso, with those throws to Frank Amano and Metcalf, and even Maher running the ball outside. I think it's going to be tough running in between the tackles, but that's going to be their best chances to test this secondary of Irvington, and I think that's what they're going to do. Defensively, Mars, again, when you play Irvington, you have to stop their stud running back, Anna Carico, force them to be a passing team, and force someone else to beat you. You want them to try to throw the ball consistently against you. If you can get them to move away from their rush attack, I think you're going to be in good favor to win. And I think that's what Albertus Magnus is going to try to do. It's not going to be easy because they're going to rely on that running game. And they're going to rely on the offensive line and that stud back to get hard-earned runs from them. But if you could try to cause penetration up front, have these linebackers attack the line of scrimmage and force them into long down situations, I think Albertus Magnus will have a chance. Mars, what are your thoughts on Albertus Magnus?
Yeah, when it comes to the offense, I really think that the key to victory is going to be the offensive line. I really think that they have been improving, and I really like the way they've been playing recently. I just think that when it comes to how well this offense is going to move, it's really going to depend on them. If they can win the line of scrimmage, really allow for the run to open up a little bit, it then gives the pass ability to kind of for that to open up too, and then now you're really cooking, right? But it all starts with the offensive line. Can they get a good push off the ball? And when it comes to defensively, force the pass, right? You're going to almost have to send a lot of guys to have to beg for the pass to come, and then you just got to rely on your best athletes to make a play.
Yeah, and when I look at Irvington, Mars, offensively, we know what they want to do, right? They want to run behind this offensive line that has some size and athleticism to it. With their stud back, Anacarico. And that's what they're going to be the main prerogative of this offense. The question is going to be who else makes plays for this team. Is it going to be in the passing game? Is it going to be another running back? Is it going to be in the wide receiver who makes a big play? Somebody else is going to have to step up against loaded boxes, because that's what you're going to expect from these teams to try to stop this run. So we're going to see who's going to make these big plays. It's going to leave opportunities for other guys, and we're going to see from Irvington offensively who's going to step up, because the last couple of weeks it has really been a grind offensively if they can't get the running game going. Defensively, Mars, I really like this the defense. I think it's a gritty defense, and it has to start with stopping Cody Johnson and LaRusso. Those are the two, the duo they have running the ball inside and outside has been a big problem for defenses the last 2 weeks. But I do think with this front, and I do think with this linebacker core led by Kim Stein and Anacarico, they can cause some issues stopping the run. The big thing to me is the secondary. Can they match up with the outside weapons of Albertus Magnus? That's going to be a big indicator for this one, because I do think they have the personnel to stop the run. The question to me is, can they stop the pass consistently? Because we did see the last time they played against Hastings. Hastings really hurt them passing the ball, and I think Albertus Magnus is going to try to test that this week. Mars, what are your thoughts on on Irvington?
When you look at Irvington, I mean, Anacarico has been very, very impressive, and I think that, as you kind of mentioned, the fact is you want to see somebody else become a key cog in this offense, and I think that that would be kind of the key to victory. Can somebody else step up to really draw away some of the attention from Anacarico, or really just take the opportunity when given to them? Yep. I think because most likely Anacarico is going to be the key to the defense. They're going to be looking at him and really trying to stop him from making those big plays. So if somebody else can step up and make a play, then that means the offense is definitely going to be moving around. But if they don't, then as you mentioned, it's going to be a struggle. Yeah. When it comes to defensively, stopping Cody Johnson is going to be kind of the key figure for me. But I really like the way this front line's been playing. Yeah. It's really the big question, as you said, was can the secondary match up with some of the skill guys that have on the outside? If they can, then I think the defense is going to perform pretty well.
Yeah, and the matchup I'm looking at this Albertus Magnus pass attack versus the Irvington secondary, and that's kind of what we both discussed as being a key matchup in this game. Mars, let's go to another independent game. This is another really good game I'm looking forward to. Hastings, Mars, 3-0 at Braiarcliff, who's 1-0. This could be the matchup of the top of the class and in the independent league, Mars. But Braiarcliff has owned this matchup. They're 6-0 versus Hastings. And by the way, it's Braiarcliff Hamilton, the combined football program between the two. But Braiarcliff 6-0 against Hastings. Since 2004, with the last time they played in 2019, they won 26-14. But we talked about Hastings beat Croton Harmon last week. Braiarcliff has been on COVID pause after their big victory against Edgemont week 1. We haven't seen them in 2 weeks. So, again, they come back. And let's start with Hastings, Mars. The job that the coaching staff and the kids have done at Hastings this year, they definitely deserve a big applause. I mean, the last time they had 3 wins, I think it was about 10 years ago. So this has been a big opportunity for Hastings, and they've taken advantage of it. But offensively, I really like the potent pass attack that they've had, Mars. It starts with their quarterback, Robert Kennedy. He's had 7 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, Mars. And they have those 2 Capuanos, Chris Capuano, the wide receiver, and Keith Capuano, who have been absolute studs. Chris Capuano, I think, is their most explosive pass catcher. He had 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Keith Capuano was a big target. He had 2 touchdowns last week. But a guy that I really like, the most reliable guy, and he was a Frank's finest before the season, Rotororti, their wide receiver. He's had a touchdown in each of the last 3 weeks. So, when in big moments happen, that's definitely the guy that I can see them going to. But the problem I'm going to have is when you go up against a Braiarcliff team that has a really solid defensive back crew, Hastings might have to, try to get a consistent running game going to help with the pass because, they have some dudes at Braiarcliff who could be real ball hawks and cause turnovers. So I'm interested to see if they try to run a little bit more with Kyle Honecker, who's also been a really good player both sides of the ball for them. And we'll get on the defensive side, but, he's been a guy who's been very impressive as well. When I look at defense, Mars, we talk about the potent offensive attack and the pass attack, and a lot of people are talking about that Hastings pass attack. But I want to talk about the defense, Mars, of Hastings, because that's what the biggest surprise is. They only give up 4 points a game, Mars. That's number one in all of the independent league, both classes. Number one, Mars. Hastings has the top defense. And it starts with their defensive lineman, Honecker. I mean, this guy, he's like the Tasmanian devil. He causes serious mayhem, serious penetration into the backfield, and it opens things up for everybody else. And there's been a bunch of guys who've made plays in this defense, but it's definitely led by Honecker. And he's going to have a big game against a really tough offensive line in Braiarcliff for them to cause some havoc. And they're going to have to get some pressure because, again, Braiarcliff also has a really deadly offense that could throw the ball. My question to me is this secondary. Can they match up with these skill guys? If Honecker can get some pressure, can Capuano or Rotororti, can they match up with the skill guys at Braiarcliff? Right, because they're going to see opponent attack as well. So we're going to see. I'm really intrigued about this matchup. Hastings is a very good squad, but so is Braiarcliff. So this is going to be really interesting. Mars, what are your thoughts on Hastings?
Yeah, I really like the way that their pass offense has been very efficient. I mean, they have wide receivers that are pretty reliable, but I really think they need to open up the playbook, have a little mix of run and pass, because as you mentioned, Braiarcliff is going to now look at the pass and try to stop it as much as possible. And I really think that if you have a nice mix between run and pass, it'll definitely keep them on their heels, and they're going to have to try to figure out what you're going to be coming out with. But as you mentioned, the defense is really the most impressive part of this team. I mean, being ranked first in overall points allowed
out of 12 independent teams.
Yeah, I mean it's a very good stat to have. I mean, because it's a pretty large group of teams that you're comparing it to. But I really like the way that they give their offense many opportunities to score as many points as they can. But the big thing they need to do this week is provide pressure, right? Cause some mayhem in the backfield, and you'll definitely see some turnovers occur.
Absolutely. Going to Braiarcliff, Morris, offensively, I'm wondering, because of the 2 weeks off, are we going to see some rust from this team? Are we going to see some turnovers or some penalties? Because Braiarcliff, personnel-wise, they're one of the most talented teams in the independent league. I thought they were the class of the independent league after week one. And it's because they can run the ball and they can pass the ball, and it starts with this offensive line that's one of the best in the independent league back when we saw them in week one. And their running back and wide receiver, Rispoli, is really a dual-threat guy. He is their Swiss Army knife who could do a lot of things and cause a lot of issues for defenses. So expect to see a lot of him. Expect to see running with Proctor, running with Savage, who's one of the best athletes. And then quarterback Milano, I thought he had a really nice first week throwing the football. So we're going to see, does he come back? Does he have some rust? Or does he click on all cylinders? So I could imagine Braiarcliff is salivating at playing another game because he has a lot of weapons, but Milano did a good job. And we're going to talk about you throwing a Savage, Morrow, Rispoli. Talking about one of the best offenses in the independent league. And I think they are the best offense. But we're going to see. They're going up against a really solid defense that caused a lot of penetration, that has made a lot of plays and made offenses struggle. So this is a really intriguing matchup to me, Mars. With the offensive line, of running back, the weapons. They're very explosive against the number one defense of the independent league. That's going to be a really intriguing matchup, and I'm looking forward to it. Defensively, Mars, to me, it's about creating pressure up front, right? Hastings likes to throw the ball. You got to create some pressure up front and allow your defensive backs to see if they can match up with the Hastings wide receivers. We talk about Savage. He was a Frank's finest on both sides of the ball. He had a pick week one. You have guys that can, if you can force some pressure on the quarterback, they can force some turnovers, these DBs, because they are an athletic group. So to me, forcing turnovers will be big for Braiarcliff against this offense, and giving your offense more opportunities against this top defense. Because I don't think it'll be too easy. But if you can get your offense more opportunities, I think they could start to hammer away at this defense, and eventually the dam will break, and I think Braiarcliff can have some success. Marsh, what are your thoughts on Braiarcliff?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Braiarcliff, I mean, it really has to be about this matchup, like you said, with the offense versus the top defense. I mean, you're really going to see which team has the most potency when it comes to their side of the ball. I really think this is going to be the biggest matchup of the day. But I do like the way they play offensively. They're overall, like all around, run, pass, they have it all, right? Yeah. They have everything you would want to have as an offensive-minded coach. And really the question is going to also go along with the defense. Can the defense cause some turnovers to occur in order for the offense to gain back another chance? Just because I just feel like when you look at these two teams, I mean, Hastings has been playing consistently. I mean, Braiarcliff has lost a lot of time to kind of be in that rhythm. As you said, you might see some rust, and I think that's going to be a big disadvantage. So you need to have the defense need to come out to play, and they need to cause some turnovers to get their offense back on the field.
And to me, similar to what you said, the matchup I'm looking at these Braiarcliff offensive weapons versus the Hastings secondary in this pass attack. It's going to be a really intriguing matchup. Mars, let's go to a B matchup, and this is on a Sunday. We got Nanuet 1-2 at Ardsley, who's 2-1. Mars, did you know Nanuet is 9-4 versus Ardsley since 2004? Nanuet has historically owned this series, but recent memory, Ardsley has owned this matchup. They've won the last 3 games, Mars, including a 40-13 win in 2019. So over the grand scale of things, Nanuet has been on top, but most recently, Ardsley has been the one that's been delivering the blow. But when you look at last week, Nanuet, they beat Putnam Valley to get their first win. Ardsley lost a really tough, grinded-out game versus Westlake. But let's start with Nanuet, Mars. We know what they are. They're a run-heavy team. They like to pass the wealth around to a bunch of different runners. But it's going to be tough sledding against this Ardsley front. I mean, Ardsley is one of the – we'll get into their defense, but they're the best tied for the best defense in the class. But Nanuet has good size up front. It starts with Azima. It starts with Knapp. It starts with Urzi. They have some good size up front. They like to run at you with Nicolucci, who had 2 touchdowns last week, with Tim Ryan, who had a touchdown. James Moran got on the board with a touchdown, and even their quarterback, Lenahan. Again, we know that Nanuet wants to run the ball. The question is going to be, can some of these quarterbacks make plays in the passing game? Guys like Lenahan and Frondy, can they throw the ball consistently to keep a defense honest? That's going to be really important because I think it's going to be hard to just run right down their throat. Now, if they can, obviously, if the offensive line wins up front, that's going to be a huge boost, and it's going to give Nanuet a real chance to win. But they have a wide receiver in Edwards, who's a tall receiver, again, really good straight line speed. Can they make some big plays in the passing game, to hit some big chunk plays that can help this rush attack, keep guys out of the box? And I think Nanuet might have a chance. Defensively, Mars, they're very sound defensively. They're a tough unit defensively, Mars. They only give up 11 points a game, which is 3rd out of the 8B schools. We know Nanuet is known for their defense, and again, this year they have proven that. And it starts again. They have good size up front. They have linebackers who are very active, led by Ryan. It won't be an easy task going against Ardsley because Ardsley has good size up front too, with 2 backs. One can run downhill in Albertus. One is kind of a more shifty slasher guy in Phelan. But what I think Ardsley is going to do is they know it's going to be difficult to run. I think they will test it, but I do think they're going to go into some more spread looks. Marson is really going to test the secondary of Nanuet. Can they match up with some of these receivers? That's going to be the big key for Nanuet to stay in this game. And I think Ardsley's going to try to mix up some more spread concepts. Another big thing, too, is they got to keep the large in the pocket. They have a mobile quarterback in Ardsley, young guy who can make plays with his legs when things aren't there. It's going to be important for Nanuet to try to contain him from breaking outside. Mars, what are your thoughts on Nanuet?
I mean, when you look at Nanuet, straightforward, they're trying to run the ball. Yep. And that's kind of the big thing about them is that they're very good at doing so. But Ardsley has a big front, and the question is going to be, can you constantly just run, or can you find some passing opportunities? Yes. And I think that if Nanuet can hit on some passes, especially some big plays that might not be expected, then you might have Ardsley on their heels. They might be kind of shaken by the fact that now you're going to start passing. And I think that, when you're scheming against Nanuet, you're like, well, we're going to try to stop the run because that's what their favorite thing is to do. But I think if you're Nanuet, mix it up, right? You have some different types of plays. Not saying you become an air raid team, but have some play action, have some stuff that makes it look like you're doing your run plays, but really have a nice pass, a pop pass, over the top. Some of those things might open up the game for you. And when it comes to defense, as you said, they have some size. The question is going to be, can they handle a combination of both spread and power? If they can handle that, then this game will be a lot closer than what people may think.
Yeah, and this is a good defensive unit. But Mark's looking at Ardsley offensively. They're going up against another tough front. They went up against a tough front in Westlake, and they're going up against a tough front in Nanuet. But I think a different style front, right? Because Westlake, they have some really good speed up front. They really like to penetrate. For Nanuet, you have size, then bulk. So it's going to be slightly different. So I do think running the ball is going to be different. I think that they're going to try to test off tackle and test outside, not so much from guard to guard, right? Because of that size up front, because those linebackers attack the line of scrimmage well. I think they're going to try to get outside. And that's what off tackle runs with Albertus, outside runs with Albertus, outside runs with Phelan, who has been really solid for them. And I think they're going to try to get Ballars on the edge. I think they're, like I talked about, I think they're going to go into some spread looks. I think they're going to roll out their quarterback, and he's going to try to test his secondary, throw into some of the weapons that he has in Watson, Jones, Peterson. They have some weapons on Ardsley, and you saw some of that against Westlake, that they can make some plays in the passing game. And I think that's what they're going to try to do against Nanuet. Mars, defensively, again, it's all about stopping the run. It's going to be big for them. Rely on this defensive line, rely on these linebackers to win the battle up front and force Nanuet into uncomfortable situations, which is throwing on second and third and long. So we're going to see if they can do that. But again, Ardsley they have the number one defense in B, tied for first place with Byram Hills. This is a very good defense, a very sound defense, and I think Ardsley's going to rely on that defense to get them the ball consistently. And I think Ardsley will go into some spread looks and try to win this game and bounce back. Marsh, what are your thoughts on Ardsley?
Yeah, I mean, the big question is going to be how the offensive line holds up. I think that they played pretty well recently. I just think that now you're going up against a more of a powerful front, and I'm wondering what their mindset's going to be. Most likely, Ardsley is a very interesting team. Yep. They can do both run and they can pass. I think that when you look at comparison between Nanuet and Ardsley, I think I would rely more on Ardsley to be able to do more with what they have. I think that if they feel as if they have the advantage running, they're going to just slice and dice you. But if they feel like as if they can pass more on, they're not afraid to do so. Yeah. So I think that when you look at how this team's going to play against Nanuet, they're definitely going to open up with some passes that definitely keep them honest, to have them kind of wondering what's going to happen next. Yeah. So, I really think I like the way their offense plays defensively, force the pass. Yeah,
and for me, the matchup, because Nanuet loves to run the ball, I'm looking at this Nanuet offensive line versus the defensive front of Ardsley, who has been really solid for them. Mars, let's go to the game of the week. And this week's game of the week, we're going to stick with a B matchup, Mars, and it is Pleasantville 2-1 at Byram Hills, who's 3-0. These teams have split the series since 2004, but Byram Hills won the most recent matchup in 2019, 28-21. It was a close, grinded-out game. Pleasantville last week obviously lost to Hen Hud. Byram Hills beat Burke Catholic. And before the season started, they divided these up. I know we're still in COVID, but they divided these teams up into divisions. And so if Byram Hills wins this game, Mars, they're going to win their division. They're going to win the division. But if Pleasantville wins, if Pleasantville pulls off the upset, there's going to be a three-way tie between Byram Hills, Pleasantville, and Hen Hud, who's unfortunately is not going to play a game this week because of COVID pause. But things will get very interesting if Pleasantville can find a way to win. But if Byram Hills wins, it'll be a really good achievement to win the division. So this is going to be a really intriguing matchup. But let's start with Pleasantville, Mars. Offensively, again, we know what they like to do. They like to mix it up, but the run game is what their identity is. They want to run the ball, but the question I have is the health of their running backs, right? We know that May got beat up a little bit last week. We don't know the status of what the running backs are going to be. So is it going to be May? Is it going to be a Picard? You're going to see more Picard. You're going to see a new face join the fray. But the big thing with that uncertainty is the reliance on this offensive line. This is a veteran offensive line. They're going up against a very tough front in Byram Hills. They're going to have to win this matchup if they're going to have a chance to win. They're going to have to step up, and they're going to have to move some bodies out there, because this is going to be tough. If they do not, it's going to be a long game for Pleasantville. So it starts up front with this veteran offensive line. Can they step up? Can they meet the moment and win this matchup is going to be huge. And obviously they're going to have to make plays in the passing game. So you look at quarterback LaCapria. He's had 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. But last week, they had some bad turnovers that really hurt them. And turnovers, you're not going to beat Byram Hills losing the turnover battle. So that's going to be really important to be smart with the ball, to make smart decisions. If it's not there, run. Right? If it's not there, throw it away. Right? Don't force things that aren't there and cause you to force a turnover. But I got to give a shout out to another player, Mark McDermott. He has been sensational for Pleasantville this year. He makes plays in special teams. He made a bunch of big plays offensively. And he is a weapon on the outside that Byram Hills is going to have to be careful about. Because if they single coverage him, he has the ability to hit home run plays, and he's done that the last few weeks. And he's going to have to be a bit important for them to have an efficient passing game. Defensively, Mars, it starts with stopping Wheeler. We talk about this every week. Every team that plays Byram Hills, it's hard to stop him, but you got to slow him down. And it's a 4-quarter battle. You might stop him for one half, but then he'll hit a couple big plays on you. Right? Don't get discouraged, but you have to rally to the ball. I'm looking at these linebackers are going to have to be very active in this game, Mars. But the big thing that hurt Pleasantville last week, they had a terrible first quarter, right? And then they regrouped and they really clawed their way back, but couldn't make enough plays at the end. Big plays. You cannot allow these long touchdown runs and these long touchdown plays, because Byram Hills has similar speed to Hen Hud. If you get them in open field, they will hit the home run on you. So That's going to be really important. Don't give up these big plays. Make the offense grind down the field on you and see if you could try to make some big plays on third and fourth down. That's going to be big for Pleasantville, but I'm looking at these linebackers to make some plays, Mars. What are your thoughts on Pleasantville, obviously without giving away too much information?
I mean, when it comes to Pleasantville, I'll talk a lot about last week to kind of guide us into this game. I think that, as you mentioned, early on, the game looked like it was going to be a blowout, and the team ended up fighting back, clawed their way back, and the defense really stepped up. They limited a lot of the mistakes, and we really started to see how the offense was just really opening up. I mean, we saw how the offensive speed was there, right? Yes. It was there the whole time, and I think that there were some mistakes that happened. I mean, granted, you can say from all points of views, there was a lot of mistakes in the beginning of the game, but I really think that for Pleasantville, in order to win this game, you have to limit those mistakes because Byram Hills is going to capitalize on any mistake that you make. And I think that it's going to start with the quarterback, LaCapria. I think he needs to kind of show what he can do. And I mean, you've seen glimpses of how he can play very well. Yes. And it's really just going to be dependent on how he performs this game. If he comes out very efficient, hits the throws he needs to make, and I do rely on the running game to continually play well, then you're going to see this offense kind of open up a lot more. The defense, on the other hand, they've been performing pretty well up to last game, and they
really the first quarter.
Yeah, and there's really just those little mistakes where they just had big touchdowns, and other than that, they were performing very well. I mean, they really stuffed Hen Hud quite a lot in the rest of the game, and allowed for the offense to kind of come back and rescore and score a lot of these points. So it's really going to be about stopping Wheeler, stopping him from being the one that beats you, and really force other players to have to step up.
Byram has it, so you have to. It's got to be a group effort, and you just can't break contain. So don't sucker yourself in and let Fruling and Franco get on the outside because that'll be a long day for you as well. But let's talk about Byram Hills, Mars. Offensively, I got to start with Fruling, the quarterback. He has been improving each week. He has been a force for them. He had 4 touchdowns last week, Mars. He'll hurt you with his arm. He'll hurt you with his legs. And obviously, their running back Wheeler is making the case to be MVP of Class B. So they have a real dual threat. They have a dual threat force with the quarterback and the running back. But also, it was really good to see, and not good for Pleasantville, but it was good for Byram Hills to see Franco come back. He scored a touchdown last week. That brings another dynamic to this thing. We know how we feel about Franco, Mars. So if he could play and he could stay healthy, that's just another weapon that adds to Byram Hills. But Byram Hills can do a lot of things because of these weapons. They can run outside on you. They can run downhill on you. And I think they're going to try to go into those spread looks and try to test Pleasantville outside and see if they can contain, see if they can prevent the big play. And if that doesn't work, I think they'll just try to run with some power. They'll bring in the tight end. They'll bring in an H-back and run downhill at Pleasantville. I do think Pleasantville has a good front 7. Right? They have some bulk. They have some guys on the defensive line that I like. They have some linebackers who are very active. So I don't think it's going to be the easiest just running downhill. But I do think that, Byram Hills, another thing that kind of hurt Pleasantville, Mars, the misdirection in the first quarter really hurt them. So I'm expecting Byram Hills to do some fakes and some misdirection to try to get Pleasantville to bite hard and see if they can catch them off balance. Defensively, Mars, again, this is the tied for the first defense in Class B with Ardsley, Mars. They only give up 7 points a game. They have talent at each level. I'm expecting them to load the box and stop the run and force the quarterback to make throws consistently and see if they could try to force turnovers and get pressure on them. But it starts up front, right? Ratson is one of the best defensive linemen in the class. The guy is a game wrecker, and I'm expecting him to have a big game. Carnival, another defensive lineman, and even their linebacker, Abit Marco, he's another really impressive guy. Byram Hill has a bunch of talent. If they could try to stop the run and get into long down situations, then you look at the secondary with Fruling, Franco, Weinhoff, who had an interception last week. Then you can see those guys try to make some plays and force some turnover and get your offense the ball. But Mars, what are your thoughts on Byram Hills?
Yeah, when you look at Byram Hills, they just have a lot of weapons on offense. I mean, Wheeler is definitely the guy that you're going to key in on this game. But you definitely have guys that can play all across the field. I mean, and that's going to be the most dangerous thing about them. Yeah. The fact that they can hit you in any spot, and they have a guy that's perfect for each type of a play that you want to run. When it comes to their defense, they're going to definitely try to load the box and stop the run. I mean, Pleasantville's most dominant style of offense is having a very strong run offense first, and then pass second. And I think that Byram is definitely going to test that. They're going to see whether or not you can make the throws. And obviously with LaCapria having shines of greatness, but also having some mistakes, especially saw early in the game and even at the end of the game last week. they're going to want to see it if he's going to bounce back.
Yes.
And I think that they're going to load the box and force him to make the throws.
Absolutely. And to me, the matchup, I'm looking at this Pleasantville pass attack. We've talked about it, both of us, versus this Byram Hill secondary. It's going to be a huge indicator in this game. To me, the player to watch, though, Mars, I'm looking at Eli Ratson. This guy, because of how many players that Byram Mills has, it's hard to give enough credit to everybody. But he really is one of their best players, and he makes a lot of plays on the defense. I'm expecting him to cause some havoc in this game. You ready for the game picks, Mars?
Yeah, man, I'm ready to roll.
Listen, when we talk about these game picks, in Class B, I think I haven't picked one game wrong yet. And I kind of want to pat myself in the back. I think I only had one game wrong. But for CD and Independent, Mars, we have really struggled these last couple of weeks picking these games. I don't know what is going on, but let's try to right this ship. Again, we want to hit those over 55%. If we get to 60, that's what we really want to be. But let's get into it, Mars. First game, Independent, Poughkeepsie 0-3 at Ramapo, 1-1. I'm going to go with Ramapo. I think Ramapo bounces back from the tough loss that they had last week. I think quarterback Richie Lewis is going to bounce back. But most importantly, I think this defense bounces back. They gave up way too many big plays against Peekskill. I think they come extra motivated. I think they win this game.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to go with Ramapo as well. I feel like you can't really have 2 bad weeks in a row. I mean, I rarely see it happen. I think they're going to have a bounce back win this week.
Let's go to stick with the Independent League, Mars. Croton Harmon 0-2 at Edgemont, who's 0-1. Edgemont had that tough loss week 1. They were on COVID pause the last 2 weeks. I'm going to say this. I think Croton Harmon is a very gritty team. It would not shock me if Croton Harmon wins this game. Ryan Lavelle has been really solid for them. He had that pick 6 last week. But I am, and I also think Greece has been pretty solid, but I am going to go with Edgemont in this game. I know they had a slew of injuries week 1, including to their star quarterback, Gio Leonardo. They lost a couple starters for the year. I don't know the status of Jake Rosen, but if he is playing, he's going to be the best player on the field. And I think they try to rely on this offensive line. They try to rely on the run game. And I think Edgemont squeaks out a real close one. But I'm going to go with Edgemont, Mars.
I'm going to go with Croton Harmon. I think that Edgemont, as you mentioned, has a lot of injuries. I think that the momentum is kind of slowed down a lot. And I think that Croton Harmon is a gritty team. I think they're going to pull off a victory here.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame him. But Edgemont, I'm just going to give this stat out, has won 6 straight versus Croton Harmon. Just throwing it out there. Let's stick with the Independent League, Mars. Peekskill 2-1 at Kingston. And again, Peekskill was supposed to play Ossining. That game obviously had to get canceled. Peekskill got Kingston. Again, these athletic directors are doing a really good job with that. But unfortunately, I'm going to go with Kingston. I really like what Peekskill's doing offensively. I think they play with really good tempo. Guys like Tinsley, Ritter, Cousins have been really solid for this team. And I think they're going to show make some plays offensively. The question I have is defensively. And Kingston is one of the, is a really good program. That has extra depth, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game, Mars. I think Kingston is going to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go Kingston as well. I've been picking Peekskill a lot, and they've been really proved me right. I mean, they've been playing very well, especially like I keep mentioning this new feeling about the program, the new field. It's a great story to hear about that they're kind of rebuilding everything. I just think that Kingston just has too much depth to kind of beat them. So I think Kingston's going to win.
Yeah, and that drive to Kingston is not an easy one either. Nope, so that's going to be a tough one. Let's go to C now, Mars. We broke this game down. Bronxville 3-0 at Woodlands, who's 0-2. I'm going to let you go, Bronxville hater. Does Bronxville go down this week?
Woodlands has a lot of talent behind them, and I don't know about Bronxville, but they definitely Woodlands has the speed. But I'm gonna have to go with Bronxville. As much as the fans out there just do not believe that I can rep the Bronxville Broncos here in front of me. There's a reason why this is here. But no, I'm going to go Bronxville. I mean, they have a lot of talent, a lot of speed, and they've been performing both offensively and defensively. I think this is going to be kind of another chain of victories that they've been proving that they are the best team in their class, and I think they're going to really just show out in this game.
Woodlands, the first game they had, they made some explosive plays and put points on the board. Last time they played Haldane, they couldn't get that. So the big, they really do rely on the big play, and I think Bronxville is going to win this game because they're going to limit those big plays. It's going to make it tough for Woodlands to drive and move the ball. Mars, let's go to a CD matchup. Valhalla 2-1 at Haldane 1-2. We broke this game down. I'll let you go first, Mars. Who wins and why?
I mean, this is a really tough one in my opinion. I feel like when you look at both these teams, they've been performing pretty well, and I just think that when you look at Valhalla's offense, I really like the way they've been playing. They have a lot of weapons, and I just think that I'm going to stick with Valhalla just because of the fact that you're looking at Haldane. You really need to have another player step up. I mean, Darren Santos has been very good.
Yeah.
I just think that you haven't really seen another guy step in to be his Robin. I think that in order if someone doesn't do that, then I think this is going to be a pretty big win for Valhalla. But they could prove me wrong. I just think that so far I really haven't seen it.
Listen, I still have a lot of faith in Daniel Santos to help Darren Santos, but I am going to go with Valhalla as well. I think Valhalla has done a better job finding its identity. I know they hit a bit of a rough patch last week offensively, but they just have too many playmakers who can hurt you. When you talk about Mahari Davis, Melvin, Joe O'Neill, and then now Lorenzo Robinson. I think Valhalla is going to win this game, but it would not shock me if this goes down to the wire. Let's go a CD matchup as well. Another one, Mars. Rhinebeck 0-2 at Tuckahoe, who's 2-1. I'll go first. I'm going to go with Tuckahoe. I think offense has been a struggle with Evan Falco going down for Rhinebeck. I think Tuckahoe is going to bounce back. I think they had a smart game plan versus Bronxville to try to throw the ball, but it just wasn't there. But I do think they'll have a better opportunity to get Myers going, running the ball with this offensive line that they couldn't do in last week. And that will open things up in the passing game. So I do think they go back to relying heavily on Myers and this offensive line. I think Tuckahoe wins this game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tuckahoe as well. I feel like, when you go up against Bronxville, you're having a really tough time being able to run the ball effectively, especially with your top-tier talent of Myers in this offensive line. But I think this week they're definitely going to kind of reevaluate where they are and kind of finish what they started and kind of push through with this offensive line and Myers as their key players. I'm going with Tuckahoe.
Let's go to a B matchup, Mars. Putt Valley 0-3 at Westlake, who's 1-1. I'll go first. I'm going to go with Westlake. I think Westlake had a very impressive victory. You both called that upset that they had against Ardsley. Westlake is one of the top teams in B, Mars. It's because they have a bunch of talent. But what impressed me the most, it wasn't Matthew Sardo who was making the big-time plays. Obviously, he's very important to them. But it wasn't Sardo who made the game difference plays against Ardsley. It was guys like Lamas, Falkenberg, Piazza. The other guys stepped up outside of Sardo. If they can continue that brings another dynamic to this Westlake offense, which we know they have a really solid front. We know about Sardo, but that was really impressive to see. Westlake defense obviously is very talented, so we know about that. I'm going with Westlake.
Yeah, I think Westlake's going to win this game. I just think that Putt Valley is still kind of developing what they are, and they just didn't. I think defensively they're tough for a team that's probably the smaller of all these teams. I just think that Westlake's kind of cooking recently, and I think that their momentum's going to push them past this game.
Let's go to the Independent League. Another really intriguing matchup. Mars Albertus Magnus 2-1 at Irvington, who's 1-1. I went back and forth in this game a lot because I found this matchup to be really intriguing. I'm going to go with Albertus Magnus, Mars, and it's because I think Albertus Magnus can do a little bit more offensively than Irvington. Irvington's a very reliant on the offensive line and Anna Carrico. They haven't proven yet to me if they can win another way. I think Albertus Magnus the last couple of weeks have proven that if they can run the ball, they could throw a little bit. The offensive line is improving for Albertus Magnus, and this defense has played really solid the last couple of weeks. I think they're going to try to make it difficult to run the ball and force Irvington to make some plays in the passing game. I'm going to go with Albertus Magnus, but again, I think this will be a close one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Irvington. I think that Irvington's defense is really what's going to drive me to kind of pick this game. I think their front has been playing very well. I think they're going to really control the line of scrimmaging, really cause a lot of mayhem in the backfield. And I think that they're going to cause Albertus Magnus to make some mistakes, and they're going to capitalize on those mistakes, especially the fact that they're playing at home too.
Yeah. Sticking with the Independent League, Mars, this is my second best game of the week. Hastings 3-0 at Braiarcliff, who's 1-0. I'll let you go first on this one, Mars. Does Hastings continue the Cinderella story, or does Braiarcliff bring him back down to earth?
I think Braiarcliff's going to bring him back down to earth. I think Braiarcliff has a lot of talent behind them, and I think that when you look at this team, they just have so much that they can offer to the table, especially when it comes to their offense. And I think that when their defensive point of view, you just need to cause some mayhem. I mean, if you can get into the backfield, cause some penetration, you give your offense another chance to score some points, and I think that they're going to do that. Not saying it will, but they're gonna be very efficient in this game, and I think they're gonna pull off a victory. I think it'll be close, but I think Braiarcliff's gonna win.
Listen, I have a lot of respect for Hastings. Hastings has been very impressive. The coach and the kids deserve a lot of credit. But I'm going to agree with you. I think Braiarcliff brings them down to earth a little bit. I think Braiarcliff is the best team in the Independent League. Now, it would not shock me if Hastings goes up. It wouldn't shock me if Hastings pulled this upset off. But if I think Hastings will probably go up early because Braiarcliff will be a little rusty. They haven't played in a couple weeks, but eventually they will get going with the weapons that they have and the front that they have. I think they'll control the momentum of this game and eventually put up enough points on this defense. I'm going to go with Braiarcliff to win this game. Let's go to the C matchup. Mars Dobbs Ferry 1-2 at Blindbrook, who's 0-1. I'll start it off. I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry. I think Dobbs Ferry bounces back. They have been struggling defensively. They've given up way too many points, way too many plays. I thought they took a step in the right direction versus Valhalla. The problem was special teams let them down. They turned the ball over. So I do think Dobbs Ferry defensively definitely took a step in the right direction versus Valhalla. I think they continue that trend. I think offensively, they're going to make some big plays. They're going to win this game and get back on track. I'm going Dobbs Ferry.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Dobbs Ferry too. I mean, unfortunately, Dobbs Ferry has been losing my picks for me, but I'm sticking with Dobbs Ferry. I think that they have a lot of talent in the offensive side. They just need to be efficient on all sides of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams. You kind of need to make sure you don't have those turnovers. You need to stay efficient, and I think if they do so, they're going to pull off a victory here.
Let's go to the B matchup. Mars Nanuet 1-2 at Ardsley, who's 2-1. This is an intriguing matchup to me with bulk versus bulk on the fronts. But I'm going to go with Ardsley. I think Ardsley bounces back, Mars, and it's because of their defense. Their defense is tied for first and B. I think the defense will come ready to play. It will make it difficult for Nanuet to move the ball. And I think, although Nanuet has a really tough defense, I think Ardsley will have enough opportunities if they go into the spread look that they'll put up some points. I think Ardsley bounces back and wins.
Yeah, I think Ardsley's going to win too. I feel like Ardsley just can do more than just run the ball. I think they can kind of mix and match depending on what you're coming out with. I know Nanuet's defense has been playing well lately, but I think Ardsley's just going to capitalize on any weakness that they might have and just win this game.
Obviously, for the game of the week, Mars, you are not going to pick this game, but I will. It's Pleasantville 2-1 at Byram Hills, who's 3-0. Question is going to be, when you look at these two teams, this is Byram Hill wins, they win their division. If Pleasantville wins, it's now a three-way tie, and we make things very interesting. I really like both fronts on these teams. I think the linebacking core on both groups are very active. Defensively, really solid units. But I am going to go with Byram Hills. I think Byram Hills wins because they just have a little too many weapons on offense. The health status of the running backs of Pleasantville makes me a little nervous. Who's going to step up? It's going to have to be a group effort. But, again, it comes to that offensive line of Pleasantville that's going to need to step up. And I think they will put up a good fight. But I just think Byram Hills has got too much guys. They just got too much guys that are a little bit healthier than Pleasantville. And I think that's going to be the big difference in this game. I'm going to go with Byram Hills. That is our show, everyone. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great sports-filled and safe weekend. We'll see you all very soon.